It is self-evident that these men did not fight for the United States of America. They fought against it. They were erected purposefully to send a strong message to all who walked in the shadows about who was still in charge in this city.
That's an excuse. Tell me how you're promoting peace.
Can you look into the eyes of this young girl and convince her that Robert E. Lee is there to encourage her?
Exactly. You're not promoting nothing but silliness.
Do these monuments help her see her future with limitless potential?
It's not peaceful because you're not saying what's on your mind.
These monuments celebrate a fictional sanitized Confederacy, ignoring the death, ignoring the enslavement, ignoring the terror that it actually stood for.
You had a lot of people in that group that were there to innocently protest and very legally protest because, I don't know if you know, they had a permit. The other group didn't have a permit. So I only tell you this, there are two sides to a story. I thought what took place was a horrible moment for our country, a horrible moment.
New Orleans has become ground zero for the national debate on removing Confederate monuments. The issue has become so divisive in the community that sometimes even family members will get into heated debates. In large part, the movement to take down the monuments has been galvanized at the grassroots level, with organizers from Take 'em Down NOLA at the head. Outgoing New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu threw his full support behind this effort when he ordered the removal of the statues of Robert E. Lee, P.G.T. Beauregard, Jefferson Davis, and the Liberty Monument. Pierre McGraw is the president of the Monumental Task Committee, a group that maintains, restores, and cleans statues in New Orleans.
I feel that monuments are very important parts of any community's landscape. They usually represent people or events that at some point the community thought so highly of or wanted the world to remember. So they would erect monuments. They take messages to future generations. And so it's not only take a message that these people thought was important, but I think it also draws some attention to the group of people that put the monument up.
The statue of Jefferson Davis was promoted by the United Daughters of the Confederacy, also known as the UDC. While working to honor Davis across different cities in the United States, the UDC established the Jefferson Davis Memorial Association in New Orleans. Again, intentions were clearly stated, as this newly formed association said they wanted to build an appropriate monument commemorative of the life and services of the only president of the Confederacy. This memorial association was formed to pay tribute to his services.
So the statues were put up to remind white Southerners of their power and their lineage, and at the same time remind African Americans that in the grand scheme of things, they don't matter. And in the grand scheme of things, that the Confederacy is still here, and we are here, and we're forced to be reckoned with. So, of course, at that point, you have statues going up, and at the same time, you have Jim Crow kicking in, right? There's no coincidence to the statues coming up, right? With the statues, they definitely send a bold message of definitely inferiority or superiority by whites and inferiority towards blacks, right?
The monument to the Battle of Liberty Place, built in 1891, had plain-spoken intentions.
What's the reason for anything that we've got in this country if we can't stand behind it?
It was meant to be a monument to the triumph of white supremacy. A plaque placed on the monument in 1932 states this fact.
When we talk about these monuments, there's one thing that everybody's missing. These monuments were all put up during post-Reconstruction. There's something that happened in this country during post-Reconstruction, and that is there were more black men lynched in this country than ever before in its history in post-Reconstruction. That's when they were all put up.
It wasn't until decades later that this plaque was removed and history was whitewashed.
And to say that, it'll help some kind of perceived inequality, or that certain people can't prosper in the shadows. You know, we can't do well while these monuments are there. Ask yourself, and you know the answer, that in our city, in New Orleans, there are minorities that have achieved greatness in all the fields. I mean, you have small and large business owners that are minorities. You have physicians, you have scientists, you have members of the judiciary, you have mayors that have all come from minorities, and they all prospered in the shadows of these monuments. And so it's sort of a weak and baseless argument to say otherwise.
I mean, the success is there, but you know, you had examples of African American success during the era of segregation, and that doesn't mean that I want to preserve the era of segregation just because some people overcame it. So, I mean, I think using current black success as a justification doesn't work. The question, I mean, part of the question for me is the impact of monuments. I'm not sure monuments have as much impact as some other things.
But the thing about Beauregard that is so interesting is that soon after the war, he founded a movement called the Unification Movement. And if anything, and this movement was to recognize that the war was over, we were defeated, let's move on, and let's enfranchise the newly freed slaves with the right to vote and to participate in the education.
P.G.T. Beauregard was the Confederate general who ordered troops to fire on Fort Sumter, thus beginning the Civil War. To commemorate his services to the Confederacy, a statue of him atop a horse was installed in 1915 on Esplanade Avenue at the entrance to New Orleans City Park. In subsequent decades, controversy raged regarding this statue. Critics felt that it lionized men who fought to preserve slavery. Furthermore, these critics argued that it was belittling and intimidating towards African Americans.
Now, you will get many stories about General Beauregard. General Beauregard was from New Orleans. General Beauregard also helped to construct the waterways and the canals in New Orleans. General Beauregard fought for an industry that supported slavery. That's not excusable. For General Beauregard, for Robert E. Lee, for anyone that supported that mission to support slavery, I don't believe that that person deserves a statue of honor in a public space.
Archivists and historians alike have collected letters from Robert E. Lee. He wrote one in 1856 to his wife, stating, "In this enlightened age, there are few, I believe, but what will acknowledge that slavery as an institution is a moral and political evil in any country." Lee went on to write that slavery is a greater evil to the white man than to the black race, and that the painful discipline they are undergoing is necessary for their instruction.
Everyone in the community should know about their past, you know, for the good and bad, to learn where have we been. You'll never know where you're going until you know where you've been.
I mean, the most fundamental problem I have with monuments, and I hope one of the things that comes out of this controversy is an appreciation for the fact that any monument is not a particularly useful way to deal with history.
Throughout this ordeal with New Orleans Confederate monuments, many have lost sight of the important and tragic legacy of our country's original sin: slavery and racism.
Historical markers should do three things. It should tell truth, explain context, and deplore the false values of the past. The New Orleans Confederate monuments do none of these three things.
As the community and country move forward, we must remember this truth, lest we remain a confederacy of dunces.